Welcome to week 4, an introduction to critical thinking and how to use it effectively in your studies at UCEN Manchester. In this session, we will cover what critical thinking is and recognise how to effectively use critical thinking models. By the end of the session, we will have a top tips list on how to be a good critical thinker, as well as some further resources on this topic. Here are the session aims: to understand what critical thinking means, to know how to effectively use the skill, and to develop strategies to improve critical thinking. Critical thinking in the context of academic study involves approaching something with an open mind, free from bias. When you think critically, you remain objective and use evidence to form your ideas. Good critical thinking skills use strong reasoning to weigh up all sides of an argument, while also helping you to develop your own judgment and opinion. As a student, you will need to be aware of what can help you to be a good critical thinker. Being open-minded and unbiased. Learning to be critical means that you have the ability to see both sides of an argument. Testing and supporting your arguments with strong evidence. Using critical thinking models to help you to show high levels of understanding and form good arguments. You will also need to know what can act as barriers when developing your critical thinking. For some, critiquing experts such as authors and researchers can feel intimidating, but you must remember that being critical of a source, idea or an argument is not the same as simply disagreeing. It is very easy to let our own opinions and beliefs impact our reasoning. However, in academic studies, it is important to use and draw upon facts and evidence to justify your ideas. The biggest barrier for students is not knowing how to just start. This tends to lead to students being descriptive rather than critical. In the upcoming slides, we will tackle some of these barriers. Now that we know what critical thinking is, why is it so important? Critical thinking is an important skill that can be used in different settings: academic, employability, and personal. HE level study requires students to develop and use their critical thinking to assess evidence and support different arguments. Your tutor will expect you to use critical thinking to familiarise yourself with new topics and arguments. It's not enough just to describe what you have read, as this does not get you the top grades in your assessed work. Critical thinking skills are also valued in the world of work. Used as part of the interview and assessment processes, critical thinking and reasoning are one of the top employability skills needed in most industries. Critical thinking is also a life skill that can help you in your personal life. You can use it to weigh up different pieces of information and ideas you are presented with. As you develop this skill, you will have clearer understanding and make better decisions based on fact. Have a think about what skills are associated with having good critical thinking. Can you name any of those? It might be a good idea to think about the 3 settings we discussed in the previous slide. Here are some that I identified. Can you think of anything else? Like any process, critical thinking requires time and practice. Let's say you have started a new topic on your course, or you've been given an assignment to complete. The first thing you will most likely need is information about the topic to help you understand the basics. Questions like what, when, who and where are simple questions to get you started. As you become more familiar with your topic, you can delve deeper and begin to analyse why, how and what if. Critical thinking begins at this level and continues when you evaluate what you are reading using questions such as what next and so what. For those who are visual learners, here is another way of looking at this process. This is the same model to generate critical thinking. As you can see, it follows the 3 steps of description, analysis, and evaluation. If you really want to get to grips with critical thinking and really upgrade your understanding and learning, the taxonomy of learning is a great model to use. Bloom's taxonomy is a hierarchical model used to analyse and encourage students to use higher order thinking skills. It was created by Benjamin Bloom in the 1950s and is widely used to develop levels of knowledge based on complexity and specificity. It is important to note that all levels of the model are important, and a range should be used in your studies. You are not expected to use every level in your studies, as it may not be necessary. However, to improve your assignments and get those top grades, the higher levels should be used. Whether you decide to use the three-stage model or Bloom's taxonomy, there are a few things to keep in mind when reading and evaluating sources. Use a checklist like this to keep you on the correct path. Critical. Begin by selecting the best evidence for your subject. Look at how robust your source or evidence is. Is it well cited and referenced? Describe the evidence. What are the strengths and weaknesses of your source? Identify gaps and limitations. Be critical and look for research to fill in gaps in your knowledge. Highlight alternatives. Draw on additional sources and evidence by comparing and contrasting with others you have read. Ask yourself, is there an argument that opposes this? Or is there an argument that validates this? Don't forget to check if there is any new developments or changes over time. This helps you to consider any contextual information. Summarize your position and address any issues or implications for your argument. We are nearly at the end of the session. Here is a summary of what we have looked at. In this session, we have had the opportunity to understand what critical thinking is and recognise some top tips on how to use critical thinking. Critical thinking means that you are using analytical skills and evaluation to form an argument. Good critical analysis evaluates why something is good or poor, why it works or fails. It is important to remember to continue to question the source using higher level thinking. Ask questions such as, is this source useful and how? And what is the author really trying to say? Use critical thinking models to become successful in your studies. Employers also like critical thinking skills as it shows independent decision-making skills. It is important to remember that like any other skill, critical thinking requires practice. It is a process that requires time and effort, as you need to read widely and gather different opinions. I hope you have found the session useful today. If you are interested in continuing to develop your critical thinking skills, click on some of the links above, especially UCEN Manchester Week 5 and Week 6 sessions, where we will look at critical thinking in more detail. Also, if you want to know how critical thinking relates directly to your course, it's a good idea to speak with your personal tutor who can provide you with more support. Thank you for listening.